Welcome back to our program. This morning, we take a look into the world of police work from a retired cop who spent 37 years on the Miami-Dade Police Force. His book is called The Real Greatest Show on Earth, and it's a fascinating look behind the badge at the day-to-day life of a cop working the streets of South Florida. Bert Gonzalez is a retired sergeant. He says cops see things no one should ever see, but also things no comedian would ever imagine. The author is joining me this morning. I assume you saw some funny things as a police officer, right?
Quite a few.
I want to talk to you about a few of them. But first of all, welcome to our program.
Thank you for inviting me.
You spent 37 years as a Miami-Dade County police officer,
yes.
And then you decided to write this book, which is a pretty formidable book. Tell me about it. Why did you decide to write this book?
Throughout my travels, as I like to say it, handling calls, meeting people, and let me preface this by saying this happens to all of us. Everything I wrote about happens to every cop everywhere. So I speak in general terms for us, not just me. I've had many people say to me, all the things we see and do and are involved in, you should write a book. And I've heard that I don't know how many times. So when I was getting near the end of my career, I said, all right, let me give this a shot and see if I can do this.
And you titled it The Real Greatest Show on Earth. Explain that title to me.
Out there, we consider it kind of a circus. And we're the ringmasters because of everything that happens, and it never stops happening, and it's always a sideshow here, a sideshow there, and the main event in the middle. So I said, it sounds like a circus, and then I thought of the title, and it just clicked, and I said, I have to name the book this.
First, I want to ask you about your nickname, Maverick. How'd you get that?
So in 1988, I was having a few internal difficulties with a supervisor. And then they decided to develop my career, as we call it, and transfer me to another station. So I was at Station 5, our Southwest District, which is now Kendall. And they sent me to the Midwest District to the Midnight Training Squad. That squad trained rookies. And when I landed on the squad, I discovered that all the squad members had nicknames from the movie Top Gun. This was '88, 2 years after the movie. I said, okay, that's fun, that's nice. And I started learning all their nicknames, and they said to me, well, Bert, you come with a reputation of doing things your way and having been in some trouble, so you're a Maverick. And it stuck.
You consider yourself a Maverick?
Yes, I do, because I never went along with the crowd. When I was a kid in school, I never hung out with the guys if I didn't feel like it, and they knew to leave me alone. So I wasn't brought into getting into trouble.
But could you do that as a police officer? Not go with the crowd, not go do what you're told to do?
I did my job. I followed orders. I took umbrage sometimes with some of the orders and things the way we did things, but I always did my job to the best of my ability, and that was never a question. It was more a personality issue.
Okay, so in your family, and I believe we have a photograph to go with this, you were a cop, your brother is a cop, your son is a cop, your daughter-in-law, if I'm correct, is a cop, your sister-in-law, and you also have a niece.
Yes.
Who's a cop, and you posed for that beautiful picture right there. So it's sort of the family business, is it not?
It is. In '83, when I started, I never realized I'd be starting the family business. My brother and his wife were in the Army at the time, and then he came on leave and rode with me when I was out on my own after training assignments. And I remember him one night after we're running lights and sirens all over the place. He turned to me, and I'll leave the colorful metaphor out, but he said, I'm going to do this job when I get out of the Army. And he came into it right out of the Army. His wife became a dispatcher and then a police officer, and now they're both retired.
Okay, so tell me, what was life like for you 37 years as a Miami-Dade police officer?
I could not believe I was getting paid to do this. And
really?
a lot of us feel that way because it's exciting, it's fun. You're busy, you're going from call to call. At that time, we got into chases all the time. It was the time of the cocaine cowboys, and they kept us pretty busy. In the Southwest District, where a lot of them lived, let's call it a lot of mayhem. There were a lot of killings, but it was just a great time with Miami growing the way it was, and we had to continue to grow with everything that was happening, us in the city of Miami, because we were relatively smaller departments at that time. But I can tell you that driving in the evening, and my favorite shift was always the afternoon shift, transition from day into night. and I didn't want to go home. A lot of us didn't want to go home.
Really?
Because we were having so much fun.
Well, let's talk about that time in Miami, because I was here too.
Yes, I know.
Worked as a reporter, and I know the corrupting influence that drugs had on this community, and in many cases it did touch the police department. It touched almost all levels of our society, right?
did.
And many people believe it built Miami,
Yes.
that drug money. How did you keep things in check while you were a police officer out there and seeing some of the temptations that existed at that time?
I and the people I was closest to never had any temptation. That badge that's on the cover of that book, that meant everything to us, and we would never tarnish it. I was never influenced by that. I was around money like you couldn't believe when we would do seizures, and there was one case where we actually located a home down what is now Palmetto Bay, and a family was living there, posing as a family living, but it was a house to run drugs out of. And when we hit the house that night, we had $1,300,000 in cash and garbage bags.
Sitting right there.
Sitting right there.
Easily, you could have grabbed some of that money.
Easily, but nobody ever worked with, that I stayed close with, ever did anything like that.
How do you feel when you hear the term, there's some bad apples? When you hear a story of police officers who went too far with a suspect, or you've seen some of the videos that are out there, surveillance videos, and people say, oh, well, in every profession there's some bad apples. How do you feel about that term?
The term that's mostly used for us is that 99% of all cops are good. And Eliott, I'm tired of hearing that.
That's a high percentage.
It is, but we're the only profession that anybody ever says that about. Nobody ever says it about any other profession.
Right.
We don't like corrupt cops any more than anybody else does, okay? I don't associate with them, and kind of a funny story, I played tennis, since we were talking about our love for tennis. I played with a guy who ended up getting arrested by the DEA for helping drug dealers. Now, we played quite a few times, and I know after he was arrested that they were watching me too as an associate of his. And they probably got into my financials to see what I was about and discovered I'm not into anything. I don't have a lot of money. But we do not like corrupt cops as much as society doesn't like corrupt cops.
Bert, what did you like the most about being a police officer?
As far as a physical activity, running lights and sirens. That is so much fun, short of being on a racetrack. The other side of it, I enjoyed training others, training and mentoring. I was part of quite a few training committees, and I would say that our groups, if you total all the people up, about 25,000 over our career that we've trained in various disciplines. And I've always been a trainer and a mentor, the best that I could.
And what advice do you give young cops?
Number one, you got to watch out for each other. Number two, don't let your guard down. You cannot turn your back on anybody. In the book, two of the things I describe that make our job different than everybody else's, and some people are going to look at, when they hear what I'm going to say, go, wow. Two things that separate us. Be polite and courteous to everyone you meet, and be prepared to kill them. Because it can go sideways that fast. You're handling a call, you're handling a domestic, and someone comes out with a weapon. You stop a car, and all of a sudden they're drawing a weapon on you, when you were just going to go up and tell them they had a busted taillight.
Did you have to shoot anybody while you were a police officer?
Fortunately, I did not. The closest I came was to a shooting we were involved in on 79th Street Northwest, and a Hialeah motorman stepped right in front of me when I was going to pull the trigger. And I had enough presence of mind to pull back, because I would have shot him in the back.
How often did you go to work thinking, hey, I may not come home to my family tonight?
I never really thought that. I went out, I had confidence in our training and all the people around me. And then as I became more older in my profession, I gained more experience. I had a lot of confidence that we were going to go out and we were going to do our jobs and everything would be okay.
What advice do you have for young people going into police work now, after 37 years of being on the street?
You've got to have your heart and head in the right place. This job requires sacrifice. You don't get everything that you want instantaneously like we do in our society now with the phone and everything. It's a lot of hard work. You're going to see things that no one should ever see. Things are going to happen to you. And the best thing, what day one in the academy that our training advisors, Tony Soto and Corporal Anderson, told us in the first hour, understand that you can get seriously hurt or killed on this job. And before we put any money into you and time and training, get up and leave if you can't handle that. Young people need to understand that. It's not just about whatever prestige it is to wear a uniform and all the benefits, the great benefits that we have, especially in South Florida as police.
It's service.
Yes, it's service to others and to each other.
The book is called The Real Greatest Show on Earth by retired Sergeant Bert Gonzalez. Bert Maverick Gonzalez, that is. And Sergeant, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your service and for your family service.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back after the break.